Unit 5, ratios and percents. Lesson 7, percents, fractions, and decimal. Our lesson objective is to find equivalent forms of fractions, decimals, and percents. We're going to start out by converting percents to decimals and decimals to percents. So in this first box here is changing a percent to a decimal. In order to do so, we're going to simply drop the percent sign, find the decimal, and move it 2 places to the left. This is times 100 because remember percents are out of 100. And here is the first example. On the next part, we're going to take a decimal and go backwards back to a percent. So we're going to find that decimal. We're going to move it 2 spaces to the right. This is dividing by 100. Then we're simply going to write our percent sign in at the end of the value, and we have our percent. So let's take a look down here at the practice. Down here, we're asked to write each percent as a decimal and each decimal as a percent. When you're taking a look, numbers 1 through 4 are percent, so we're going to change those to decimals. And numbers 5 through 8 are decimals that we're going to change to percents. So let's first look at number 1. We have 30%. We're going to follow those steps up above, which said to drop your percent sign. So we have 30. At the number 30, our decimal's at the end. We're going to move it 2 places to the left. So we have decimal 30. I'm going to put in a 0 as our placeholder for the ones, and then I'm going to box that. That's my decimal. When I look at 14%, I have 14 because we're going to drop that percent sign, put our decimal at the end, move it 2 places to the left, so I have 0.14. I'm going to fill in our placeholder here for holes and box. Pause the video, take a minute, and answer questions 3 and 4. Now let's take a look here at numbers 5 through 8. We're going to go now from a decimal to a percent. So for a decimal to a percent, it says to take your decimal. Now we're going to go the opposite direction. We're going to move it 2 places to the right. So then we end up here with 85 and fill in your percent sign. So 85 hundredths is 85%. I'm going to skip 6 and 7 and go take a look at 8 here. We have 6 tenths, so I have 6 tenths. I need to move this decimal 2 places to the right. When I move it 2 places to the right, I have an empty loop, and I'm going to annex a 0, add in a 0 there. Does not change our value, but it changes our place value. So now I have 60, because we want it out of 100, and we put in our percent sign. So I have 60%. So 6 tenths is equivalent to 60%. Pause the video, take a minute, and answer 6 and 7, changing those decimals to percents. Here on the back, now we're going to work with fractions. So here we are going to change a percent to a fraction, which is simply dropping our percent sign, writing it over 100 because a percent is out of 100, and then we simplify because fractions always have final answers in simplest form. Then our next part is going to be a fraction to percent. There's a couple ways that you can do this. Here you could just simply divide your numerator by your denominator because the fraction bar does mean divide. Find that decimal and then change it to a percent. Or you can make an equivalent fraction to 100 if that's possible. You can make a fraction to 100 also by solving it proportionally. Write that sideways. So you could set it up as a proportion. Let's take a look down here at these examples. Again, we're asked to write each percent as a fraction. So if we look at numbers 9 through 12, that's what we're going to practice there. And then we're also asked then to take each fraction and change it to a percent, and that's in 13 through 16. So let's start with 9 through 12. Number 9, we have 92%. Remember, changing a percent as a fraction is drop your percent sign and write your value over 100, and then simplify. 92 over 100 has a GCF of 4. So 92 divided by 4 is 23. and 100 divided by 4 is 25. So we have then 92% as a fraction is 23 over 25. We can look here at number 10. We have 80%, so drop our percent sign and write it over 100. 80 over 100 has the GCF of 20. 80 divided by 20 is 4. 100 divided by 20 is 5. And we're going to box that. 80% is equivalent to 4/5. Why don't you pause the video, take a minute, and change number 11 and number 12's percents to a fraction. Let's take a look at the last couple of problems here. Now we have fractions, and we're going to change them to percents. When I'm looking at this on number 13, I notice that my bottom portion, the denominator, is 25. So I'm going to use where I can take my fraction and make it equivalent to 100. I know that 25 can go into 100 4 times. So then I'm going to go up here and take 17 times 4, which gives us 68. I end up with 68 out of 100, which is 68%. Okay, but we were asked, if you look back up here, to change that fraction to a percent, and we did that. So we're going to box that and go to our next problem. I'm going to skip and go over here to 15. I have 9 over 20. Again, I notice that 20 can go into 100, so I'm going to make it equivalent to 100. 20 times 5 gives me 100, so I take 9 times 5, which is 45. I end up with 45 over 100. Anything over 100 is a percent, so I end up with 45%. So 9 out of 20, 9/20 is equivalent to 45%. I want you to pause the video, take a minute, and solve number 14 and number 16. If you notice down here below, we have some arrows pointing to here. You may want to put stars or maybe just circle this whole section, box it up. These are some common fractions to decimals to percents, and it's just a little resource here for you when you're working with your conversions.